and I'm going to start the webinar. And so, as as you probably already know, the reason why I decided to do this topic today was because I started the idea of doing several every week a topic a few weeks ago. And actually last week, or it's now 11 days ago, when I traveled back from the Netherlands, where I had to go unexpectedly to back to Australia, I was just really confronted with the fact that Schiphol Airport, which is one of the busiest airports, maybe except from Heathrow in the world, was completely empty. And I could feel myself really getting nervous about that and what the whole crisis is going to bring us. So yes, we are in unprecedented times. And I just wanted to use that opportunity to talk a little bit about personal leadership and resilience. So this is basically for people who are leaders, and I always say you can be a leader in a position or without a position, but who are keen for their personal growth. So what I wanted to talk about is personal leadership, resilience, and I wanted to share some tools. And the idea is that I'm going to do this very compact, and so I'm going to take 30 minutes. And after that, we're going to have 15 minutes for questions. So I'm just going to have to do this very quickly also, because this is something I could probably do a workshop on, and actually I've done a full day workshops on resilience. So I'm going to keep it as compact as possible. So for you, maybe just if you're a leader, I know it's so difficult, but I really also believe in close the door policies at times. You can't always have your door open and just try and get rid of all the distraction. I think everyone on here probably knows me, but I thought I'm just going to kind of say it one more time. So I'm a leadership coach and a mediator. Quite a few people who signed up for this webinar don't know me, so I'm just going to very quickly say that my background is that I was a barrister in the Netherlands, and then I worked for the United Nations for 12 years on human rights and war crimes, and then I came to Adelaide and became an HR manager. And in the end, 7 years ago, started my own business. So now as a coach, I work with teams and leaders to get the best out of them. And as a mediator, I work with teams and leaders who are not functioning that well, where there's a lot of conflict or where there's culture issues. So that's in a nutshell me. If you're not in my Facebook group, if you're a woman, sorry guys, and you're not in my Facebook group yet, then please join the Facebook group Leading Women with Tilan. So I assume that everyone can hear me. If not, you're going to have to tell me in the chat. So personal leadership, we're going to talk about why, what, and how. So basically, why should we talk about personal leadership? So basically, I believe that before we can lead others, we have to be able to lead ourselves. It's a little bit like that when you fly, which unfortunately seems to be going to be a very difficult issue now. But remember when they say to parents like, oh, put your own safety masks on first. And that is not for nothing, because in first instance, in times of crisis, what we tend to do is we tend to look after others, especially as parents, and I think also as leaders, and we forget to look after ourselves. So if that happens, then we can't really serve the people that we are working with. So it's really important that we understand that. And especially with a crisis like this, I don't know about you, but I've had all these emotions coming up, all these fears coming up, a kind of a panic feeling. And so it's really important to kind of find a way through that, because otherwise you can't really be there and be present for those people who are actually maybe looking up to you. And also in times of crisis, then when we are looking up to our leaders, they are often not there for us. So that's why I really believe that you need to be able to lead yourselves in times of crisis. So talking about what is personal leadership. And sorry, I normally really like to be very interactive, but given that we've got little time, I'm going to leave the questions for later. So it's taking responsibility for all aspects in our lives and leading ourselves to the best life we can have. And that also means that if you're in a crisis situation, you need to accept that you're in a crisis situation and make the best out of it, if I can say it that way, and make sure that you stay grounded. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I found this quote from Charles de Gaulle, and I liked it, but I know most of the women on this, most of the people on this webinar are women, so I feminized it because it was, of course, a quote about men. So I've made it a quote about women. Faced with a crisis, women of character fall back on herself. She imposes her own stamp of action, takes responsibility for it, and makes it her own. So much for personal leadership. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, so we now know why it's important, what it is, and how. And I have a few things that I think are part of personal leadership. And again, I'm just keeping it to the core. So one of them is, of course, managing self. And managing self is something I had to do when I was at Schiphol Airport, and basically kind of like, what is happening here? There was absolutely no one there. And I don't know if you read my story about it, but I was there with my oldest daughter, and she was kind of completely panicking. So I had to kind of keep myself under control. So the first thing what happens is in times of crisis is that we are often feeling very afraid. And so we have to find ways. I see a chat. Ah, yeah, thank you. You shared it with everyone in New Zealand. That's wonderful. Thank you. So about the fear is it's really finding a way to calm yourself down in the midst of all the craziness. And so knowing what fear is all about. For me, I often say fear is false evidence appearing real. Not sure if that is always the case, and maybe especially in Corona, not. But basically, I always go back to the days that we lived in caves, and we knew that when something happened, we would right away, our amygdala, our safety valve in the brain, would go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So I know when I'm afraid, no matter if that is about a coronavirus or if it is I've got I'm very afraid of heights, that my brain will go into this response mode. Oh my God, there is something happening and I am afraid, and I need to go in fight, flight, or freeze mode. So I know it's going to affect my emotions. And also what I know is that fear is often a secondary emotion. I actually had a kind of a fear attack yesterday, and I realized again, okay, what is it I'm afraid of? Because I know I'm afraid, but what is it so I'm afraid of? So I always try and find out. And I think I was just really afraid about all the uncertainty. I mean, I'm also a small business owner, and I don't know what life is bringing for me. And so it's just really stopping there and understanding it. What I wanted to share with you, and I am going a little bit out of a limb because I don't know if you find this interesting, but with a corporate background, I have always been a little bit worried about doing woo-woo stuff, but this is not woo-woo stuff. I really believe in this. It's called emotional freedom technique. I don't know if you heard about it. Can anybody in the chat tell me if they've heard about it? Because if you have, that's great. If you haven't, then I'd like to really talk you through it. First of all, I'm going to do this very quickly, but there are some great emails on YouTube about it. But it is something, a technique you can use when you are in not heard about it. Okay, so it is something very strange, but very it works really well. And if you go on YouTube and you or in general you Google EFT, something that helps, that lots of stuff comes up. And basically it is in a way that you use your energy and your meridians in your body to try and stop your emotions from taking over. You did it, Candida. You're here as well. You just did it 5 minutes ago for yourself. How about that? Yeah, definitely. I did it last night because I was feeling really anxious. So basically, what it is that you need to tap yourself, and I'm going to show this to you, and it's going to look silly, but it's going to I'm going to do it anyway. So basically what you do is, when you are feeling afraid, or when something emotional is happening to you and you feel it's getting out of control, you tap yourself, and by doing that you can actually calm yourself down. And don't ask me how it works, and we don't have time for it anyway, but just Google it, YouTube it. It's very interesting. I think the person who came up with this was Craig. So if you do Craig EFT, but I also know that Nick Ortner just wrote a book about it, which is really good. So basically what you do is you go, and I'm going to put my glasses off, and you go and you start with the karate chop point, and you say, even though I am afraid at this moment in my life because of, say, I'm worried that I don't make enough money, I completely love and accept, deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then you go to your head and you say, even though I'm afraid at this moment that I don't have any job in the future, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Then you go to the point underneath, just where your eyebrow stops, and you say the same. I'm worried about not having enough money. And you tap here, right next to your eyes. You tap under your eyes, and you keep referring back to your worry. So about that particular thing, and say, even though I'm worried that I don't have enough money, even though this is a point, even though I worry that I don't have enough money, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then, even though I'm worried, the last point is at the bra point, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And I forgot to say, when you start, you kind of make a note of how anxious you are. And then when you do this process a few times, you calm down. So don't ask me how, but it works. And I just wanted to share it with you. But again, feel free to Google more about it. So that's one technique that really works well for me. I was watching somebody who was hospitalized with coronavirus in Japan, an older man, and he had done it on himself to work out. So I need to keep going. The second thing is work on your mindset. And that is the stories you tell yourself and the stories you listen to. So the stories we tell ourselves in times of crisis are that that's something to try in the middle of the night. Absolutely. And I know I have never really shared it, but I think it works so well for me, so I should start sharing it. And I learned this from someone else, and in first instance, I thought this is nonsense. So work on your mindset in times of crisis. And again, when you are afraid, it's really easy to go down all the negative pathways, and you really need to tell yourself stories. And this is something Candida and I spoke about actually in the Facebook group in an interview I did with her, is that you need to try and remain positive, and also you need to go on an information diet. I am a news junkie, and I had to stop it because I can read so much about the virus, and it's just too much information. There's one expert saying this, another expert saying that, and I just really had to say, okay, I'm just gonna really limit it. So a crisis is a horrible situation. We don't know where this is going to go, but the Chinese use two brush strokes to write the word crisis, and one brush stroke stands for danger and the other one for opportunity. And in times of a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. This is, I think, Kennedy who wrote this down. And that is also what I mean with mindset. And especially if you are a leader, you need to show that there is hope there, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Because if you can't see that yourself, and you're going to get carried away in this deep, dark hole, how can the people that you are working with or that you are leading actually feel like that? So you really need to stay positive. And also the words we say to ourselves are the most important words ever spoken. So if I am going to go down the rabbit hole and say, okay, this is it, my business is over with this crisis, and if I keep repeating that, I'm start believing it, it becomes my truth and it's going to happen. If I say like, hey, this is also an opportunity for me to step up, to do different things, to get out of my comfort zone, even though I don't really know where this is going to go, that really changes my mindset. And that is especially so. And the other thing is, yes, we do have negative feelings, and that's why I also showed you the EFT technique, because yeah, you should acknowledge them, you shouldn't just put them away, but you really need to understand that as human beings, we survived because we kept adapting, and because we are very resilient, which we're going to talk about as well. So that's that for that. And the other thing about personal leadership is to show courage. And courage, because if you are courageous, that is contagious. So if you are in a, whether it's at home or at work, if you are in a situation where you show courage, where you can tap into your courage, other people can be inspired by that. And so courage for me is the ability to do something that frightens you. And some people, again, we believe what we tell ourselves, say that, you know, I'm not a very courageous person. For instance, when I do training, they say, oh, I don't like to speak up, I'm not very courageous. But I am 100% sure that everyone that I have ever come across and worked with, that if you go inside yourself, you know that you have been courageous at some point in your life. And that can be because you sat down with someone who was dying, or you did something that was, you know, very much out of your comfort zone, or, you know, so you can tap into your inner courage. And then with doing that, so with the mindset, with the courage, with staying calm, you role model for others what a crisis management can look like and how you can remain calm. So when you role model for others, it's about being authentic, being open and honest, because a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people have a great BS, bullshit radar. So you need to be very transparent. And I think I really liked two examples. One was Angela Merkel, who was very open and very honest. And I know I was reading about it, and I think I put it on my Facebook page in an American newspaper, who said, oh my gosh, this is so different from the way our leaders are. It's like, hey, this is not just going to go away. Here are the facts. This is scary. I'm scared as well. And that works really well. The other one that stood out for me was a press conference by, I think, I'm becoming an Aussie now. I don't know my European countries anymore. I thought it was the Norwegian president. And they did a press conference just for children. And no adults were allowed except for the persons who were speaking. And they were also very open and honest with those children. So that is, to me, leadership and self-leadership. So when we're talking about this particular stay calm and collected, so you can radiate that to others, and you can be that rock for other people, even though you may not always feel like that, and you have your techniques to work on that. The second part I wanted to talk about is resilience. And what is resilience? I took this bungee jumper because basically when you look at a resilience, it's, and I think it's coming in the later slide, it's the ability to bounce back. And why is that important? Because, I mean, just can you imagine what it's like now for those people who are healthcare workers, who are making these long, long hours, doctors, nurses, everyone. If you don't have resilience, if you don't have the ability to bounce back, you know, everything is you know, out there. You can get chronic fatigue, post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression. Just really, I know the Dutch minister just resigned. He is the minister of health. He just resigned because he was exhausted, because he never took a break. So I mean, how crazy is that? So you need to be, as a leader, but also for anybody, to be resilient and to work on yourself, that you can bounce back, because we all have our limitations. So how do you do that? Well, again, by becoming self-aware, by knowing what you can take and what you cannot take. And I think one of the things about the Dutch minister that stood out I just read it in the Dutch newspaper this morning, was that he was a perfectionist. He wanted everything to be perfect. Well, that's not going to work in any time, but especially not in a time of crisis. So to reframe things, to look at things from a different perspective. Yes, and I don't want to make it cliche, but you can look at this crisis as a horrible thing, and it is for in many aspects. But there's also some other good things coming out of it. Those random acts of kindness, dolphins who are swimming in Venice, and all those kind of things. Taking a third person perspective, so looking at yourself and saying like, hey, hold on, what am I doing now? Yes, I'm running around, but is this useful? And look at the benefits is a little bit what I already discussed with the reframing. Also the breathing. So the EFT is actually also a great thing to do in a toilet at a workplace, but the same with breathing. Find a meditation app. I do that a lot because I'm not good at meditating. If I sit like this, I can't stop my thoughts. So I just try and use an app. I think I've got Time Out, I think is the app. And then also take time out. I walk a lot when I feel that things are really hectic for me. In general, things can be tense when I do a lot of conflict work, but especially now, you see me walking a lot. And thankfully, wherever you are at this moment, I understand even in Italy, you're still allowed to go for a walk. And yeah, to try and see something positive, some kind of hope. And I know it's cliche, but this too shall pass, and something else will come out of it. We will have lessons learned about this. So this is something I actually took from the counselingteacher.com. I passed by my Facebook feed yesterday. So the things that you cannot control, and so you need to let go of these things, and the things that you can control. So what you can control is your own positive attitude, washing your hands, turning off the news, finding fun things to do at home. I was telling on my personal Facebook feed, I started knitting for the first time in 40 years, just to kind of do something completely different. Limiting your social media, not drinking too much, because that's not going to help either. I know that when in Holland they started with a shutdown, that all the coffee shops had enormous queues because people were freaking out. And I think in Australia also the Dan Murphy's is selling out very quickly. So also as a leader, or in any position, even if you're not a leader, how can you manage the stress of other people? So you need to understand that at this moment, people are not very good. They're not very good in controlling their emotions. They might be very anxious. So you need to be patient, and you need to understand. So I said, even in our house, if the four of us are going to be together, I said, we need to really work on that for each other. And the same will be in teams. Like, we need to accept that people are going to have stress times and are going to lash out and all that kind of stuff, but be patient about it, and try to focus on the other person as a leader, what is important for them. And also try, and one of the things, I'm not going to go too much into it, is the NLP, is if you can't really connect with the person, then you can try and mirror their words, their voice, their tones, the rhythm, their energy, their behavior, because people like people who are like them. But that is something that I don't have a lot of time left for. But basically, the bottom line is that anybody who feels understood will make time for you and mental space for you to understand you. So this is always my rule. Seek to understand before being understood. I try to always make sure that whoever I talk to feels that I'm understanding them. And once they get that feeling and they feel safe, then I can tell my side of the story or my issue. So I think those things are really important. The other thing is that for you non-Aussies here, is that we have the fire danger issue. And so I live in a fire danger area. And so we have to have a bushfire plan. And so I think with, it's like about acting, surviving, and it's about how to create your own resilience and survival plan. So that is when, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Seek to understand. Yes, that's great. Sorry, I'm just struggling to do both at the moment. So what I really recommend is that you make your own resilience plan. I actually have that for myself. So I know, like with the bushfire plan, you have a plan, you know where your documents are, you know where you're going to go. You've got a little suitcase with the necessary clothes and with your medication, because if it's a bushfire day, you know you need to be able to get out of the house. So what I do is I made a personal resilience plan, because I know if I'm really stressed and if things are getting a little bit too much for me, I might not be able to recognize those signs. So that plan, I've got actually one here, is basically, I'm going to, I've really thought about what are triggers for me. So when this is happening around me, and then I've made for myself a little system, as I know when I'm going to be like this, when I'm going to be, if I work a lot, or if I have a lot of really full-on jobs on, and if I don't take any time for myself, all these things, that those can be triggers for me. And then my behavior, when I'm behaving, so if I become snappy, then I know that I'm not faring very well. So I don't know if I'm the only person here, but I try not to be snappy, but I can be really snappy, and I can be very impatient, and that I know are signs for me. So I've written all those signs down that I know, okay, this is not good. For instance, if I don't sleep well, and you know, we all know sleep is really important. And and then when I feel, and then you write down your feelings. So when I feel, so I'm naturally not an anxious person. So if I feel really anxious, I know, hey, I'm now in the danger zone. I need to make sure that I'm going to stay resilient. And so then what you do with that plan is that you make a plan. Make an action plan. Yeah, does that make sense? So you say, I'll do this. So I need to tap into my inner resilience by doing this. It can be like, you know, going for a walk, listening to music, reading a book. I'm just thinking now about swimming, but I'm thinking about restrictions at the moment. I don't think a lot of people want to go to an indoor swimming pool now. But, and also, so first of all, what are you going to do? And the second thing is, who are you going to talk to? I think you need to have at least one person that you need to say, when you have that awareness, hey, I'm actually a bit worried about myself, and can you please tell me if you feel the same? So that is all about, you know, working on yourself and making sure you can do that. So I think I'm only 2 minutes over time, and given that we started 3 minutes late, very Dutch thing, I think I'm on time. So what I wanted to do is ask you if you have any questions. But before I do that, I just want to close with, the human capacity for burden is like bamboo, far more flexible than you'd ever believe at first glance. And that is from Jodi Picoult, My Sister's Keeper. And it's something that I think we can all agree on. I know that there's been times in my life where I have really thought, no, this cannot be done, and it could be done. So we are like bamboo, but we really need to make sure that we take care of ourselves. And so what action are you going to take? You've just listened for half an hour to me, and I really appreciate that. But what action are you going to take, and what are you going to take out of this, and for yourself, or maybe for your team, or maybe for your family? What can you take away from this? So that was it for now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will try and attend to them. And don't be shy. And it doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment, anything. I'm going to take some water in the meantime. Thanks, Sonia. So refreshing in a really, yeah, the EFT. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so simple. Thank you, Candida. If it was helpful, that's great. So the important to remember to take care of you, absolutely. And that for me is really the safety, the oxygen mask. And I often have to remind myself. And I think what I'm seeing at this moment, that is very difficult for leaders to do that. But, and also I think I'm going to write something on LinkedIn about it, because it's all about taking care of your staff, but it's also about taking care of you, because how can you take care of your staff if you're really not very resilient? So is anybody any particular questions? And I'm really sorry I had to rush so quickly, but I'm great to hear that you think it's useful. And about the EFT, it is so simple, it's almost frightening. And I think that's why for a long time I didn't really believe in it. You're going to hold a meeting today, and you're reminded I will check in with how people are feeling before we can really plan some action. Great. Yeah. And it's hard because many staff are worrying about jobs, and as a leader you need to keep calm, fearing that your job is also at stake. Yes, absolutely. And there comes that honesty and that transparency in, and also being able to be vulnerable. And I think, you can't say as a leader, hey, I am actually, losing it at this moment. But you can say, hey, we're all in this. And this is something that I'm finding really amazing about the situation as it occurs now. This is like a global crisis. And my friends, whether they're in anywhere, Beirut or in Panama City or wherever, everyone is having that. Yeah, it's nice to have something visual to remind people. Yes, and also what I think often works as well is either stories or metaphors. Because if you can tell people a story, then they can really relate to that better. Or if you can take a metaphor like the oxygen mask. Oh, I'm really, thank you so much, Tilan. You've truly reassured me. I need to keep holding yourself together. Absolutely. And you must look after yourself, because there's only one you, and you can't run on empty. When I started my career in a law firm, I had a really big lesson. Just when I started to work there, the partner in the law firm, he actually woke up one day and could not walk anymore. And he wasn't able to walk for 2 weeks. And that was pure stress. So that was a great way to start my professional career, because at that law firm, they were really, and you know how lawyers work, crazy hours, but they were really always talking about how it's important to take care of yourself and prevent any burnouts. Because, I mean, can you imagine that you work so hard that you can't walk for 2 weeks? So I am going to leave it for now then. If you have any more questions, and I realize that you are all having really busy days ahead of you, and techniques, yeah, calm and, oh sorry Sonia, I didn't say that, such an unmarked situation, calm and technology techniques to this is vital, absolutely. Yes, I really think, and I also really think that now more than ever, and I've said this before, but it just now makes so much sense. Now, more than ever, the world needs good leaders, and we will see which leaders are good and which aren't, and that is in the countries, but also on the work floor. And so if you are a leader who takes care of herself and also of her people, then that is something that is going to spread, and like I said, contagious, and people will really appreciate it. And it doesn't mean you have to answer, and it doesn't mean that you can't lose it yourself. So thank you so much all for staying with me for all this time. I really appreciate it. I know not everyone has spoken, but that's okay. I just really go out there and do your job, but never stop taking care. Hey, Lara, I didn't see you there. Take care of yourself and make sure, yes, you will all endeavor to carry forward all the learning. So that's the one thing. I always try and take one action point and really do that out of anything I read or anything, any course I go to, because otherwise it's just information and it sits there. But I'm sure you've got enough to work on. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Feel free to join the Facebook group, and also if you want to be on my list, if you're not on my list for the next webinar next week, then just join me, because I'm gonna continue doing this until I really get this all right, and I am very fluent. The name of the Facebook group is Leading Women with Tilan. So if you put that in Facebook, then you'll find it. And also, actually, for those of you who are not on Facebook, and I know some of you are, we're doing a virtual meetup with people from all over the world, women, all leading women, this Sunday morning, Adelaide time, Saturday night, Europe, Canada, and the US. Sorry, afternoon in the US and Canada, and evening in. So if you want to be part of it, and that's just going to be a catch up, and it's just a kind of a check-in with each other. Have a wonderful time, and thank you so much for being here. I'm leaving you now, and have a good day. Thank you.